just thinking about permanence and time and commitment and options and all that kind of stuff, really. I suppose I'm prompted to think of this. It's been something that's been ticking over for a few weeks in my mind. I'm prompted more specifically by this conference I went to a few weeks ago, months ago now, probably in Wales. It was quite a small conference, and it was about relation and participation. Doesn't matter the details of that. But I made a YouTube video from there, because I was kind of a YouTuber in residence, they called it. And in this video, I basically stood in front of this group of people and took all my clothes off on camera and put these rabbit ears on, you know, and invited people to come and join me on stage. Well, it wasn't really a stage, it looks like a theatre piece, and you see it wasn't, it was just like a dais at the front of a conference room. But I invited people to come down with the knowledge that they would also be naked on camera and that the video would be uploaded to YouTube. It was a fascinating experience for all kinds of reasons, but speaking to people, of course no one came down, no one took the clothes off, as I anticipated. But one of the things that came up afterwards, which I guess I hadn't really thought about, was that people were saying they would have been perfectly happy to do it, because most of these people were either artists or intellectuals, or you know, working at the kind of left field of that kind of area, really. So most of them weren't terribly squeamish about those things, but they didn't do it. And they said the reason why they didn't is because, firstly, because it would be recorded, and secondly, because it would be uploaded to YouTube. And there was something about the level of commitment to the future that represents, which they just found intolerable. You know, they do it now and have their nudity remembered in some way as this kind of anecdote, maybe even written down. You know, maybe even if it was written that this person had done that, but the actual visual image of it, captured for eternity, really, or as near to eternity as our limited minds can manage, captured and distributed and freely available and available for decontextualisation, recontextualisation. That was just beyond the pale, you know, they couldn't cope with that. And I sympathise with that a lot. I haven't yet regretted taking my clothes off on that video or any of the other videos I've made, but I might well do one day. And I guess if I don't, I'll just have to keep making videos until I do make something I'll regret one day. It's all a test, isn't it? It's a test. Anyway, I was thinking about this. Well, I suppose I'm just thinking about the differences, you know, because that problem, you know, about whether to commit yourself to the future, to make some kind of a step right now, whether it be as simple as stepping over the fourth wall onto a lit environment where people can see your nakedness, or whether it be other kinds of steps, is completely different now with this free and easy accessibility of recording and distribution media, isn't it? You know, as I say, those people would not have been bothered, I don't think, if it wasn't for the fact it was being recorded. And all those other kinds of discretions, those youthful discretions that people used to be quite cool about, you know, whether it be smoking dope in college, or dropping acid in college or at school, or having lots of illicit sex when you were younger, or having affairs, or what else was it? Or committing some kind of crime, being part of dodgy organisations. You know, how many people who are politicians have just explained their former membership of the BNP or something like that as a kind of youthful dalliance with extreme right politics. You know, people do that thing all the time, and they kind of get away with it because it's not written into history, is it? In the same way that it's not, you don't get to see them doing the Nazi salutes. You don't get to see them having sex with this girl. You don't get to see them smoking the joint. You don't get to see those things. You know, it's not. What's the word? Not exactly crystallised. It's just not embodied in front of you, you know. But things are different. I remember that seeing this picture about 3 or 4 years ago. I'm going to sound like such a creep saying it. Never mind. I saw this picture about 3 or 4 years ago. I was on 4chan. What the fuck is that? Sorry. Phone. No, it's my alarm. It's alright. It's early in the morning. I was on 4chan and I just happened to come across this picture. And it was this lad, I guess he was about 15, something like that. Young man sitting by his computer, very, very limber young man, very acrobatic, almost contortionistic, you might say. Because I know that because he was giving himself a blowjob, and it was very recognisable. I mean, you could see his face, even though he was doing something which would normally obscure your face. But he was very recognisable, and I thought, oh, that'd be weird. But I also thought, wow, that picture's never going to go away, is it? I don't know if it's haunted him since, but that picture is always going to be on the net somewhere. Some bugger's going to have it, and at any point that could crop up. And he'll never become a teacher, for example, if he ever wanted to be, with that picture on his file. There's lots of things he could not do, but there's lots of things he kind of could do as well. If he chose to be honest. I don't know. There's something weird about that. And it's not because this is a new thing, that this is some weird kid. You know what I mean? In the history of the human race, there must have been millions of men who've tried to give themselves blowjobs. Millions. And a handful, a mouthful, have succeeded. Bill Hicks does that great sketch about it, doesn't he? I don't know if you know the sketch. But, and kind of people know that, you know what I mean? To the extent that when Bill Hicks does do that sketch about it, it's recognisable humour. You don't listen to that sketch thinking, a man giving himself a blowjob? How could that possibly be? You laugh because it's kind of funny. And it's funny because it's kind of recognisable. You can see the logic that underpins it. It's just not logic you're supposed to talk about. But so it exists in that kind of frame, in this kind of netherworld of the untalked about, for good reason. But then suddenly this kid, who tried and succeeded at least 4 years ago, he's put a face on that, you know what I mean? And a fairly ungainly posture attached to it. Weird that, and there's no going back on that now. There's no going back. Weird. In case everybody's nervous, by the way, I have no intention of uploading images of myself trying to give myself a blowjob, not at the moment at least. But I do, because some part of me is really attracted to that whole idea, not the 14-year-old lad giving himself a blowjob, but the idea of just doing something that you can't take back. Just saying things that you can't take back, or doing something that just you can't take back. Because it seems to me that so much of what we do in day-to-day life is about keeping your options open. You've got to keep your options open. You've got to keep your options open. You've got to take that insurance out. You've got to keep your options open. You've got to get a kind of education which gives you a fallback position in case this thing doesn't work out. Keep your options open. So much of that, But keeping your options open just means don't commit to anything, doesn't it? Isn't that what it means? Keep your options open. Don't commit to anything. Don't step into the river. You get your feet wet. It doesn't matter what's on the other side. Keep your options open. Keep your feet dry. I don't know. What do you think, Phoebes? I think burning your bridges is good. I've always burnt bridges quite a lot in my life, and I have deeply regretted many of those bridges. But at the same time, I don't know what to think about that really. Because options and bridges are all around us. You know what I mean? It seems to me. I don't want to sound terribly optimistic that this life is giving itself all these fantastic opportunities, because clearly that's not really the case, and that varies according to your circumstances, and my circumstances are quite fortunate. But at the same time, there are things you can do. There's always other paths you can take. Life is always throwing new fucking roads under your feet, isn't it? And rivers to cross, And sometimes it's good to cross the river and burn the fucking bridge. Burn the bridge. We don't need no water, let the motherfucker burn. Burn, motherfucker, burn.